Well, this one is about Bitcoin as a lifeboat. I don't know if you recall this phrase, or as a lifeline. Maybe if you are from Europe or for the States or from a country that is not facing authoritarianism or high inflation, you won't be like that cold for this. But to me, as a Venezuelan, and I think that Farida from Togo and my friend from El Salvador, we have a different perspective, because in our countries, let's say that things are not that happy in many ways. And the idea of this panel is to explore this personal experience on having this tool to overcome the destruction of our countries, because I left Venezuela because there's nothing there for me, and I mainly left Venezuela through Bitcoin. So that's the spirit of this panel. So first of all, thanks a lot for being here, and also Bitcoin Atlantis for hosting us and having the opportunity to share these stories. I want you to present yourself a little and explain us how did you became in touch with Bitcoin. Farida, please.
I started using Bitcoin some years ago as an activist. My work has evolved around fighting authoritarianism in my country, Togo. And we were going to a period of political turmoil where I had to flee the country, as well as many other activists from my country. But then we had to continue the resistance by mobilizing money and sending it back home. A couple of people got arrested because we sent funds through the traditional route, and the government was able to make the connection that the money came for the movement work. And they were charged for crimes that make no sense. So it became clear to us that we needed to find a more private way to send money without putting the people receiving the money in danger, and further exposing them to the violence of the regime. So that's how Bitcoin became a tool for us to be able to move funds, and do so without the scrutiny and the censorship. But most importantly, without the repression that comes with working with a dissident movement.
Okay, Napo, you can go in Spanish. I will translate for you.
Sorry, I really, my English is really bad. I speak Spanish. Speak everyone. Thank you. Okay. Mi nombre es Napoleon Osorio. Desde hace aproximadamente 3 años estoy trabajando para mi primer Bitcoin.
His name is Napoleon Osorio. He's been working with Mi Primer Bitcoin since 3 years now.
Y también hace 3 años, debido a la adopción de Bitcoin en El Salvador, comencé con mi compañía, la cual se llama BitDriver.
And after the law started in El Salvador, he started BitDriver. That is his company. It's a taxi service that mainly runs through Bitcoin.
Desde entonces me dedico a ir a las escuelas y a educar tanto como a la gente de El Salvador, ya que sabíamos de que como la adopción era muy rápida, la gente iba a necesitar educarse. Entonces tomamos la iniciativa de persona que encontramos, persona que educamos.
So after the law started to be in play, they started this project to educate people, and like everybody to choose into the classes, they teach them at least the basics of the Bitcoin technology. Chico, please.
Okay, I'm Enrique Berrios. I'm Bitcoin Smiles Doctor of Dental Surgery. Bitcoin Smiles is an initiative where we provide free dental care to impoverished communities. But my first contact with Bitcoin was in San Jose, California, when I was studying digital dentistry. It was in 2014, 2015, because of a friend who were working in the computing industry in San Jose. So he introduced me to that, but I was so distracted professionally with dentistry that it didn't spark me in that time. But since 2019, before the pandemic, where the Bitcoin circular economy started in El Sonte, I live in El Sonte, in the heart of that community. So I decided to enter to that dynamic, to get payments, Bitcoin payments for my dental services, or in this case, accepting donations with Bitcoin Smiles to provide the critical dental care for impoverished people living in those communities. That was like my first contact, and my second and last one, who made me, how can I say, transform my life into a Bitcoin.
Okay, and I'm participating here also because, as I said, I'm from Venezuela. And in Venezuela, back in the day, before El Salvador became trendy and all the stuff, we were the trendy guys because we had hyperinflation, and everybody said, hey, as you had hyperinflation, probably Bitcoin will solve everything there, and it's really good if you learn. And so I did, I learned a little about Bitcoin and stuff. And then I started to go to different places outside Caracas, because Caracas is the capital city and it's normal to has internet access and all the stuff. But outside Caracas, the reality is really different. And when I was there, doing meetups and stuff, the reality that I find is nobody really cares about the scarcity or the digital gold or whatever like that, because you are trying to survive to the authoritarian politics of a regime that is trying to starve the population. So it's it's a really important tool for the individuals, but in the country context, it's not that powerful. Even when you try to explain it, even when you try to push it and all the stuff, it's difficult to make people to care about something that is too abstract, is too far of their reality. And then I started to be a little cynic about it, how is this going to solve everything for everybody if they even can't afford a cell phone or internet access? So it's kind of contradictory. But at the end, my experience using and learning more about Bitcoin, it's a really successful history, because at the end I'm in Madeira, I'm coming to different conference and all the stuff, but the original background and the original context where all these ideas came to me was destruction context. Everything was really fucked up, no light, no water, shitty internet. So it's at the end, if you keep pushing and pushing and pushing it, it could solve things, but for the individual. And I think that this is my main learning after these years. It could be really important for a country and all that is good in some way, but it's more important for the individual. Let's say in a meetup with 20 people, if just only one gets it and gets excited about the opportunities and the freedom that it could it could help you to conquer, it's enough. One by one, not to the crowds, not to the masses. I don't think that it will work like that, but at least one by one, it's better. And I think that that's the main thing that I learned. And I want to ask you, for example, why Bitcoin and not why other digital thing? Because, for example, you said you were trying to see what is the best tool to help the activists, and why Bitcoin?
You mean Bitcoin specifically or other cryptos?
No, Bitcoin specifically.
Because I was gonna say that Bitcoin, we use Bitcoin and stable coins. Those were the only coins that we used because it was more reliable. There were also platforms that offered it that made it easier. But the reason why we chose Bitcoin instead of other forms of payment, as I mentioned before, number one, it was safety for us. Number two, it was privacy. And number three, it was the speed at which we could send it. Because prior to discovering Bitcoin, what we were doing as a solution to counter surveillance was that we will send the money to someone in a neighboring country. That person will go and collect the cash and then cross the border and go back. And that also came with a cost and also came with some risk because they can always be seen at the border and have issues with the government officials. It became very risky. So Bitcoin tremendously slashed that risk factor, and it gave also our donors, which was mostly the Togolese people living in the diaspora, that were raising funds and contributing to the resistance movement, because our country has been ruled by the same family for the past 57 years. So many of the people in the diaspora fled the country and live in exile and can't go back, and they really want to see change and democracy come. So they fund the movement a lot. Most of the funding for the political resistance comes from the diaspora. But at some point, they were afraid of sending funds because people in the past sent money to the movement and they went home on vacation and they got arrested. So it became evident that even if you don't live in the country and you send funds, you can still put yourself at risk by just donating to the movement. So some of our most important donors were a little afraid of supporting us because they were afraid there will be backlashes. But when we gave them the assurance that comes with Bitcoin and the privacy, they felt more comfortable because they know they're no longer putting themselves or their families at risk. So initially it was more about focusing on privacy and safety for both those receiving and those sending.
Ok, Napo, y en tu caso, obviamente no hay un contexto tan horrible como el de Venezuela y no hay un contexto de autoritarismo de 56 años como en Togo, pero ¿cómo ha cambiado tu vida Bitcoin? I was asking how Bitcoin changed his life, even though in El Salvador there is no destruction context like Farida described in Togo or the one I described in Venezuela, how Bitcoin changed his life.
Bueno, si bien es cierto, en nuestro país tenemos lo que es el dólar, el cual es una moneda inflacionaria, pero es muy lenta en comparación a otras monedas.
So they have the dollar in El Salvador. El Salvador economy is dollarized, and even though it's an inflationary currency, it's less harder the inflation there than in other places.
Pero de igual manera, la escasez de trabajo en El Salvador hace aproximadamente 3 años era demasiada y las oportunidades eran menores a las que tenemos actualmente.
But even in that context, the opportunities to get money or the chances to work were lesser than today.
Entonces podemos decir de que 3 años atrás yo tuve que tomar la decisión, una vez Bitcoin se hizo como moneda de curso legal en el país, y yo sabía que había algo, pero tomar la decisión me costó, tomar la decisión de entrar a Bitcoin me costó. Pero
So even when they made the Bitcoin legal tender in El Salvador and it's an open opportunity, it has its own risk, but he took the opportunity then.
y hoy pues podemos decir, bueno, puedo decir que en lo personal, Bitcoin ha cambiado mi vida grandemente, ya que no quiero redondar en lo mismo, pero tengo la oportunidad de mejorar mi vida económicamente, personalmente y económicamente en todos los sentidos, porque Bitcoin me enseñó me enseñó a tener una buena administración de mis finanzas. Y eso mismo lo traslado a mi familia y eso mismo lo traslado a la gente.
So when he started to accept and to work with Bitcoin, he understood better the problems of money, and it teaches to better administrate the money from his own and from his family, and the opportunity to connect with a community and to have like a more broad income, like through his work and through his BitDriver initiative. So it changed a lot his life.
Y no solo la de mis amigos o la de mi familia, sino que también ha cambiado el contexto del país como tal. El Salvador, la vida en El Salvador ha cambiado ya que anteriormente nadie sabía del Salvador, nadie conocía del Salvador. Y la primera vez que se escuchó en el mundo fue porque se habló que Bitcoin iba a ser moneda legal. Desde ahí cambió tanto como la vida de cada uno de los ciudadanos, mi vida y la vida de cada uno de los salvadoreños.
but it is not only the positive impact for his family and his own, but the whole country. Because back in the day, El Salvador was mainly known because of the gangs, because of the violence. And now, after the Bitcoin law, everybody knows that there's a tiny country in Central America that has Bitcoin as legal tender, and it put El Salvador in a new global context where, well, we are talking about El Salvador right now, so.
Y tanto así que debido a esa repercusión, creo que también El Salvador ha sido, debido a Bitcoin, siempre debido a Bitcoin, cambió El Salvador y eso le dio visión también a ser ejemplo a otros países a querer adoptar Bitcoin de una o de otra manera y está cambiando cada uno de ellos. Bitcoin da la oportunidad de cambiar siempre y cuando nosotros tomemos la decisión o creamos en ese cambio.
So Bitcoin gives you an opportunity to change, but it only depends on you to take that opportunity, and it made El Salvador an example for the global community. Like seeing a tiny country making Bitcoin legal tender is an example for other countries that are trying to figure it out how to adopt Bitcoin by themselves. So, and in your case, Chiqui, I know the Bitcoin Smile projects in 2021. He's my dentist in El Sonte. I have to go there. But I want to, because obviously in Bitcoin Beach, there was a confluence between the Mike Peterson idea to help the people, but also Bitcoin Beach guys had a project running in the place like before Bitcoin. But in your case, what was like that thing about Bitcoin that made you, okay, yes, this makes sense? What was like that aha moment, let's say?
Okay, when I started playing, sending payments in Bitcoin was with my brother. He lives in Mexico, and I used to have a wallet. I think it was free wallet, and it's on-chain transactions, So we start playing, sending on-chain transactions. But after that, I used to offer Spanish classes online for people who could pay me, what they want or what they have in order for me to help people in my community. Actually, I established myself in El Sonte in 2005. So I have almost 20 years working with orphanages, working with churches, working with, with remote and rural areas, mostly poor people. And I used to waive my fees. I used to give my workforce for free. But offering these Spanish classes, I started to get my first sats and my first Lightning transactions. I used to have a student from Turkey. I don't know if he's around. And I used to have another person from Norway. So we have 1 hour Spanish classes, and they send me sats, approximately maybe $15 approximately, And that's why we started to see that, or the magic of the peer-to-peer, It's permissionless. It is fast. It is worldwide, no intermediaries. And I have like the chance to get, some funds. And I used to start help more people that cannot afford it, right? It's not was a big deal, but for them, they never got an attention, not in a medical attention or a dental health. So that's why it was like my sparking time when I say, hey, Bitcoin could help me in any way, right? So trying to get some help from private entities, from my colleagues or any other people, to continue performing my dental offerings. Immaculately, Bitcoin appears in my life in a wonderful way through BTC Pay Server. And what we did, it's what we create the crowdfunding to fund critical dental care for people, in this case, elderly people. So that was like a shocking moment because I had to switch my normal life for a Bitcoin standard. So it's the time when I believe that Bitcoin could be my lifeboat in this case, personally, because it was a fulfilling thing for me, but it was a transforming concept in my life about economics and the way I could help my community. And so Bitcoin helped me to provide them with confidence, with dignity, with an opportunity for them to transform their lives. It's not just the oral health, it's about their projects of life that maybe could be destroyed. But when they have good oral health, confidence, they could chew better, they could eat better, they transform themselves, and they could provide with better insights or work to their own community. It was that time when I decided to go all in, with Bitcoin.
Nice timing, and it's a really touching project because as he said, like helping elder people like never had the opportunity to get some dental care is like really important, and being all powered by Bitcoin like means a lot for us Bitcoiner because we see like it could have a real impact and in a place where everything started, like it's Bitcoin Beach. So it's really great to hear about it. And Farida, I want to start with you about, because obviously we all know and we have our own experiences, and I think that are successful in some way, but also there are a lot of challenge. And obviously in a context like El Togo, I know that it will be harder, but I want to, let's say, inspire the crowd and let's give a little hope, because even in the darker place, like we can turn the Bitcoin light up. So even in the authoritarian context of Togo and in different places where we are facing the same issues, and the people start to be sad and doubt if that internet thing could work, what is your advice? How do you approach to the activists or the people in Togo that wants to find this as a solution? What are that way in which to present Bitcoin for them or stablecoins for them?
Thank you for that question. Today we use Bitcoin far beyond our work as related to fighting the regime. Similarly to what he's doing in El Zante, we also have social services that we provide with the help of Bitcoin. 2 years ago, we initiated a project that is now ongoing and that has had tremendous success, was to introduce farmers to Bitcoin. And the reason why is because in our country, more than 97% of the unbanked population are actually people in the rural areas. They not only don't have bank accounts, but they'll likely never have one. And when I say that, it sounds extreme, but it's just simple situations, because we inherited a banking system from a colonial system that was very elitist. So for you to have a bank account, you must provide an ID, you must provide pay stubs. For people who are self-employed, their business registration paperwork, you must provide an address and so on. Now, this is a country where more than half of the population doesn't even have a birth certificate. And without a birth certificate, you can never have an ID. And without an ID, you can never have a bank account. So those people are systematically excluded from all the financial services that come with banking. They can never qualify for loans. They cannot get certain services that require having bank account. And at the same time, the farmers in our country contribute almost 60% of our GDP. they are the real workers of the nation because we rely a lot on agricultural production for exportation and everything. So at some point, it was when we discovered how Bitcoin is accessible to everyone, is inclusionary, and does not require permission or approvals from governments and entities, we were like, the real people who need it are the farmers. So we initiated a project where we started providing loans, small loans to farming corporations in Bitcoin that was disbursed to these farmers in Bitcoin. And through this program, we give the farmers the option of reimbursing those loans in Bitcoin or in fiat, because we understand they could be constrained. But then we wanted to go beyond that because many of our farmers remain poor for one reason. They are all smallholder farmers, but they don't have access to fertilizers, which are too expensive for them. As a result, the average farmer in China has 20 times the yield per acre of land than the average farm in Africa. But we have food security issues. It's not that we don't have enough people farming. In fact, we have the highest farming population in the world. More than 40% of our population are farming, when in the US it's less than 15%. But we are still not self-sufficient with food because people don't have enough for fertilizers, and they don't have enough to have to increase access to irrigation and water. And nobody thinks about farmers when they are building financial product solutions and resources. Nobody ever thinks about them. Everything happens in the cities with the city communities and everything. So with these loans that we gave them, it was initially experimental. We just wanted to see if it will work. And we managed to convince fertilizer sellers to sell the fertilizers to them in Bitcoin, which they agreed. So at some point we were like, if we succeed at connecting them to grain buyers who are willing to buy the grains in Bitcoin, we solve the problem and we can build a circular economy. And we succeeded. We found grain buyers who are now buying their crops in Bitcoin. So these past seasons have been very joyful because many of these farmers have been able to augment their yield by 4 times, which means more financial security for their communities, which is more money for them and more resources even for feeding them in the long term. So we realized that by just introducing something as simple as Bitcoin, we were able to improve their quality of life, improve their resources, improve their financial access, which is something that governments and international institutions have invested billions over the years in so-called development aid projects and haven't solved. So we are now getting into year 3 and we are expanding the number of farmers we are providing services to. And we are also expanding the number of services we are providing to them entirely by Bitcoin. We, by introducing this service, realized that we were the very first financial service ever provided to these farming communities. They have no banks, they have no kiosk, they have no Western Union. Like literally, there's no way to access money in those communities. And we brought money to them. And that alone is giving us hope. And we can see from the results that it's working. And we're excited to see what the future has to offer.
That's the kind of thing that I want to hear, you know? Great. So, Napo, en El Salvador obviamente está la ley y uno esperaría que fuese exitoso y todo el mundo estuviese bitcoinizado y tal, pero yo también vivo en El Salvador y no es esa la realidad. Y me gustaría, obviamente, hablar un poco de eso, ¿no? O sea, porque tú te has dedicado a la educación desde 2021 y obviamente conoces de primera mano cuáles son los miedos que tiene el salvadoreño promedio con respecto a Bitcoin. I'm asking Napo about the fears that Salvadorians, normal average Salvadorians has when it comes to Bitcoin, because obviously the law is not enough for people to start using Bitcoin, not because it is legal tender, everybody's Bitcoinized. So I want to hear what is the knowledge that you already have about the fears and the challenge that Salvadorians are facing when adopting Bitcoin.
Que uno puede pensar que solo porque vives en el país de Bitcoin, vas a llegar y vas a encontrar un país feliz en el cual vas a enviar y recibir Bitcoin sin ningún problema. Pero la verdad, como tú ya sabes, es absolutamente todo lo contrario. Pero este se debe a la falta de educación cada uno de la población, pero más que eso, al miedo que probablemente tenga al perder por la misma volatilidad de Bitcoin.
So the main issue is volatility, of course, because even though you can think that in El Salvador everything is like really happy and everybody's taking sats and you are in every place going to pay your pupus and stuff, it's not that easy yet. And the main issue, the main fear for average people there is like the volatility, to lose some dollars in a context, in an economic context where you can't afford to lose any. So it's like the main issue.
Obviamente, como salvadoreño, si vos tenés un pequeño negocio, una venta de pupusas, y haces un gasto de, ¿qué? Tenés una ganancia de un día de $10, esos mismos $10 tenés que usarlos al siguiente día para comprar los mismos insumos para hacer la pupusa y sacar tu ganancia para poder comer. Entonces no te puedes dar el lujo de un momento a otro perder $1 o $2 porque ya tenés que trabajar el doble para poder recuperar esos $2. Entonces, bajo ese contexto, el uso de Bitcoin ha sido, si no extremadamente limitado, por no.
Okay, so in terms of the adoption, for example, if you have a tiny business that sells pupusas, let's say that you earn $10 a day. So if you kept that in Bitcoin and you are a tiny business, you can't afford to lose even $1 or $2 because then the next day you won't be able to get the things that you need to keep your business running. So that it's mainly because people needs more education about what's the volatility of Bitcoin and maybe how to administrate the money that they can get through Bitcoin. But at the end, it's like they need to give this step to get more Bitcoin.
Entonces, bajo ese concepto, podemos decir de que el uso de Bitcoin en El Salvador puede cambiar y lejos de ser una moneda de curso legal para pagar, es una moneda, es más que nada una reserva de valor.
So the main learning is that even it's a legal tender and you can use it to pay stuff, it makes more sense to use it as a store of value to save money in the long run. Even if you don't have like that much money, $1 a week that you save in Bitcoin could make the difference. And I want to close with Chiqui because we are running out of time. Like, let's inspire these people with what you are doing with Bitcoin Smiles, because I know that you, for sure, you have some history about some guys there in El Sonte that are now smiling with new teeth, and how is that changing their life?
Well, because of our first patient paid in Bitcoin, construction worker, farmer, he saved in Bitcoin a couple of years ago because he was getting his salary in Bitcoin in El Sonte. So because of him, we were inspired with the ones who are like sponsoring me, BTC Pay, Bitcoin Design. So the decision was help other people like Adrian. He's a 65-year-old person, and he used to have rotten teeth. He used to have a bone loss, a lot of infection. So a lot of work we perform on him. And after maybe 4 or 5 months of healing, he got the dentures, the best dentures we could provide to him. So that led us to help at least 50 people. We almost raised 2 Bitcoin. But due to the bear market, we almost work with just the 30% of what we've got. You know, we never stop. We have the big compromise to continue working with the patients, and it doesn't matter if we lose. At the end, we win, right? So we doubled that help. We finished the first 50 elderly people, and now we are like almost with 100 people that they got the dentures, and they changed their lives. So besides that, we started a preventive community program. So we are working with 100 kids in El Sonte with the school-age children between 6 and 50 years old. And we have another 30 in a community, in a Mayan community in Guatemala that are like part of the Bitcoin Smiles preventative community program and rehabilitation. Why we started with elderly people? Because we identified a shocking amount of people that had severe dental issues, So that's why we started with them. They were forgotten during decades. And but we are trying to provide not just rehabilitation, but prevention and correction. So that's why we are doing this work with the kids, because we want them not to repeat the reality of of their parents, right? So people, it's asking, why correction? Why don't you go to kids? Because the elderly people need and deserves dignity, right? So start with dignity, and then we start with education in prevention for a better future for these kids. So that's the work we're doing. We are working with neighboring countries. We hope to be in Africa someday. Actually, we use technique in a preventive treatment we do that born in Tanzania, in Dar es Salaam. So that it's like a really good technique, for remote areas where there is no electricity or water. So I consider we could perform not just in our community, but neighboring countries and the world, because we deserve, and they deserve, and the world deserve a better future, in this case with Bitcoin.
Well, that's the way to close this panel. Thank you very much, Farida, Napo, and Enrique. It was a blast. I think that we should give an applause to these guys, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.